The Vacation Journal of a Rainbow Pegasus by Board Game Brony. First off, I want to make this clear. I would have won that race if Derpy, those ducks, the anvil, and the 500 pounds of flour hadn't all been in the same place at the same time. Everyone saw what happened, but regardless, the judges still said it was fair, and Spitfire won. And now the Wonderbolts think I'm some kind of joke. Me! Rainbow Dash! They called me a flower girl. Rainbow Dash is not a flower girl. I don't think that emotion translated well on the page, but it was Twilight who suggested I try writing out my feelings rather than punch the remaining flour bags into powder. Mr. and Mrs. Cake sure appreciate this form of expression more. The first time I saw Clamhoof Cove, my mouth actually dropped. I just stood there on the deck of the Harmony, right next to Rarity, who was eager to introduce the place, all the while wearing a red glittery dress which reminded me of a movie I saw in Manhattan once. The one with the giant pony. What was it called? Clydesdale Kong? Every pony, I present to you the finest resort island in all of Equestria. Isn't it gorgeous? Just look at all the darling huts located along the shoreline. It's like a castaway fantasy come true. She smiled as she stared out into the bay. Twilight placed her hooves on the rail and glanced eagerly at the shoreline. I read in a book that the native pony tribes believe Clamhoof Cove actually rests on the back of a giant clam. I jumped in. Actually, I think you're talking about Daring Do in the Clam Catacombs. That sounds like the plot from that story. I don't think this place has tribes. Wow, I actually remembered that. That book was inspired by this island, so we're both right, Twilight said. Could we please go back inside the cabin? Fluttershy said. Her hooves were spread wide as she tried to keep her balance, despite the rough movement of the boat through the choppy waves. It's too hard to stand out here. Applejack trotted with effortless skill across the deck, even with the swaying of the boat. I gotta admit, it really impressed me to see how confident she was, no matter the weather. Oh, don't worry, Sugar Cube. It's just like a swimming pool, only bigger. The boat hit a rough patch and dipped suddenly. A wall of water splashed down onto the deck, soaking AJ as Fluttershy managed to jump back just in time. Applejack's hat slid around the ground as they picked it up and wore it with barely a glance. I've never seen that happen in a swimming pool, I said, holding the hat above my head. She snorted water out of her nose as she smiled. Funny, Rainbow. Now give me back my hat. You can have it back if you can take it from me. I knew it'd get to her. Applejack is as competitive as I am, and she has fun when she's itching for a challenge. Still wanting to prove yourself after that race? She asked. Ha! I don't have to prove anything. I thought now would be a good time to go aerial and shot upwards a dozen feet above the boat. But just so I can keep myself in shape for my adoring fans, I'm going to use this trip to train on the island. And when I'm done... Oh, pelican! I'm not going to describe how a random pelican tried to eat my face. Dash! Twilight yelled. There's a fish stuck in the brim of the hat. Drop it! Sure enough, after Applejack was hit by the wave, a small fish was now sticking to the hat by its mouth. I tossed it to the deck, and the fish fell off, flopped towards Fluttershy, and landed at her hooves as the pelican swooped down to snatch it. Fluttershy grasped the fish in her mouth and took off back to the cabin as the bird flew away, unsatisfied. She walked back a moment later with the fish inside a water-filled plastic bag, hanging underneath her saddle pack. And now Fluttershy had her 438th pet. We later learned his name was Mr. Wiggles. Twilight jumped in giddy anticipation. It looked a lot like the time she learned her favorite author was signing books at Canterlot Library. I can't wait to see what kind of exciting things are waiting for us on that island. She looked around. Hey, where's Pinkie? Woo-hoo! A pink jet ski shot by. It was ridden by a pink pony wearing pink goggles with darker pink hair. In other words, it was Pinkie Pie. I found the jet ski in storage. It's amazing! How does she do that? All right, I admit it. I could have waited. I could have stayed on the boat and sat still while the guide led my friends and the other guests onto the shore and into one of the quiet village huts. It would have made things easy and probably saved a lot of heartache in the end. But I'm a Pegasus. I don't need a boat. I only took the ride because I wanted to spend time with my friends. But there's nothing wrong with a little scouting trip, right? While still 10 minutes out from the shore, I took off on my own. Applejack kept yelling for me to come back, but I was too fast for the rest of her shouting to catch up. As I landed at the edge of the forest, I could see it all play out in my head like some awesome adventure. And yeah, I started dorking out when I began to narrate aloud. As Daring Do trekked through the forbidden jungle, she came across not one, but two panther warriors. Garbed in the armor of their secret society, they lunged at the Pegasus. Bam! Snap! Derpy jumped back as the two warriors fell into her pitfall trap, hidden beneath a patch of leaves on the ground of the rainforest. The lackeys of the Thunderstake were no match for the wit and awesomeness that was the greatest adventure of all time. The League of Exceptional Equestrians was sure to see Derpy's skill now that she proved herself. As the words left my mouth, I knew the thought that was going to hit me like a hurricane. They would never turn her away. I stopped moving, stared at my hooves, and tried to think of something, anything, that would keep my mind off the failure which had happened only last week. Maybe if I kept moving, the thoughts would go away. As I walked along the path and let my wings rest, I caught the scene again in my mind. But it wasn't two panther warriors anymore. Spitfire and Soren replaced them in my mind, laughing. Like they did at the race when I fell. Or did they? Did I imagine it? Of course I did! They aren't like that! They're part of the Wonderbolts! They would never treat me in such a mean way. In fact, I don't remember seeing anyone with all the flour in my eyes. It had to have been my imagination. Ha! So that was it. I was getting worked up over nothing. The biggest threat I had at the moment was fear. And pelicans, apparently. Enough sadness. Can't fly when I'm carrying the weight of my past on my shoulders. Oh my gosh, that sounded so nerdy. Just gotta keep walking. And that's when it hit me. Right in the face. Why does everything have to go for my face? The speeding form shot through the air, knocked me down and held me to the ground. A few seconds later, after my brain stopped shaking, I realized whatever hit me happened to be sitting on my chest. I looked into one eye, staring down at me, and the other perpetually looking at something incredibly interesting up above. Derpy! Sorry, Rainbow Dash, the bane of my existence said as she stood up and looked left and right at the same time. What are you doing here? I asked. I think my eye twitched. I'm delivering the mail, she said, and stuffed an envelope into a coconut tree. I was about to mention the odd move when a monkey climbed down the branch, grabbed the envelope, read the name, and handed a banana to the gray Pegasus. Thanks, Derpy said to the primate as it trailed up the tree and disappeared. I honestly didn't know what to say. I'd seen chocolate rain fall from the sky, witnessed Pinkie Pie defy physics, and who knows what other laws of reality. Narrowly escaped starvation under a rock slide when my pet tortoise Tank saved me, but never have I seen such... Forget it. I'll just ask. How? Muffins. I stared. What? Do you have any? Derpy continued. Her face was very serious. I could have said, I don't have any muffins, because I would have had muffins if you hadn't destroyed all the flour, dropped an anvil on me, interrupted my race, embarrassed me in front of half of Equestria, and nearly drove me to fly into the sun, where at least I would find some peace and quiet for the split second before my mane burst into flame. Or I could have said, ah! But instead I said no. Alright then, see you later, Rainbow Dash, my brain pain said as she trotted off into the tropical forest of Clamhoof Cove. I sat still for about a minute. Then, like a raging river shattering a dam, I finally broke. I've often heard my friends give my moves very creative names. So when my scream reached the atmosphere, which I know it did, I like to think my friends would have called it a stratospheric rainboom. As the scream pierced the sky, I imagined what it would have been like had Luna still been stuck in the moon. She would have looked down at the ripple of fury tearing through the skies of Equestria and thought, the Royal Canterlot voice has nothing on that cloud-annihilating Pegasus-induced rage which has torn the planet in two. We think we shall stay here, on the moon, for 1,000 more years until whatever caused that monstrous bellow finally calms down, and she would have been right to do so. 30 seconds later, my friends came tearing through the brush. Dash, are you all right? Twilight said as she ran through first. Rarity and Applejack hugged me close as Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy looked on, examining the clearing. What is she yelling at? Fluttershy said, looking around as she shivered. I don't see anything, Pinkie Pie said as she scratched her head in confusion. She's here, I muttered. Who? Rarity asked. Derpy Hooves. Everyone went silent for a moment. Applejack broke the silence. Okay, so what does that have to do with all the yelling? I saw her, I said, trying very hard not to explode. Rarity shook her head. Really, Dash, what difference does it make if she's here? You're obsessed with the pony that stopped you from achieving glory. No, I'm not, I yelled. I just saw her delivering mail to monkeys. Every pony stared. Pinkie Pie spoke. Seems legit.